Joe Biden is the most unimpressive, unpopular, and unwanted president in modern American history. Anyone who followed the 2020 campaign would not be shocked by this. The line at your local Chick-fil-A is longer than the line to get into any of Joe Biden's rallies. If you were one of 12 people who went to a Biden rally, you would have heard the future president's grand plans of mobilizing true international pressure.
I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure.
You'd also hear how it's your right to have bad health care.
Barack and I think it's a right for people to have bad health care.
Guys, listen, this is serious. Once we pass a constitutional amendment guaranteeing true international pressure and bad health care for all Americans, we will finally live up to the vision of our founding fathers. The data is in, okay? For real. And the most popular president in American history is also simultaneously one of the least popular presidents in American history. Weird. Rasmussen has Biden underwater at 48% approval after his first week in office. Didn't this guy get 80 million votes? How's that possible mathematically? The official White House YouTube video of Joe Biden's empty inauguration was so ratioed and trolled that the White House turned off the live chat and comment section. Strange thing to do, something Trump never did. That president actually loved free speech. It was okay to say something mean about him. The White House left up the dislike button, you can see. And that was a mistake. 80,000 dislikes. Woof. Less than 1 million views on that video? That is really weird. I thought that was supposed to be a historic event. Also, why did the most popular president ever need to be inaugurated under military occupation? Why is everyone turning on Joe Biden so fast? We have the answer. It's one word: betrayal. It's not often that a new president enters office and immediately betrays those who got him there, including his own faith. We'll give more on that in a moment. Many would call this unwise, but wisdom is not a trademark of the Biden era. The Biden era so far is a 78-year-old man wheeled out once a day to scratch a pen to a new stack of communist executive orders. Even that process has proven difficult. Watch. It's poor guy. You almost feel bad for him. But don't feel bad for him. He's our president. He's the most powerful man in the world. Don't let Sleepy Joe's bumbling demeanor disarm you. In that stack of binders are some of the worst, most damaging, most cruel executive actions in American history. With one stroke of a pen, Joe Biden killed thousands of American jobs for globalist clout. Find a new job. Tough luck, the Biden administration said. Check this out.
And the President of the United States has expressed in every comment he has made about climate the need to grow the new jobs that pay better, that are cleaner,
Harsh words from John Kerry, who still owns a private jet. Here's a photo of him on it. John Kerry's private jet, by the way, tons of carbon into the atmosphere. More than destroying American jobs, Biden is destroying his political base. Weird thing to do. The Joe Biden administration has refused to meet with Black Lives Matter's communists, their leaders, which, by the way, these are the same people who energize much of the flaccid Democratic base in an uninspiring election year. The group has lashed out about it online. They're not the only ones. An entire movement has begun based on regretting voting for Biden. The hashtag #IRegretVotingForBiden trended on Twitter last week as thousands openly confess that they regret who they cast their ballot for. As the executive orders dropped, Google search trends for regret voting for Biden skyrocketed. A young leftist woman posted this video as Biden began sleepily winning primaries last year. I think, by the way, she speaks for all Americans currently. It'd be funny if it wasn't so painful and accurate. And also, she has my dance moves. Think Biden is out for democracy or the rule of law? You think he's in favor of that? Look at his actions, people. Despite having a Democratic majority in Congress, Joe Biden is ruling by executive order, or as he described accurately on the campaign trail, a dictator.
The one thing that I have this strange notion We are a democracy. Some of my Republican friends and some of my Democratic friends even occasionally say, well, if you can't get the votes by executive order, you're going to do something. Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus.
Okay, well, you think Biden is for his own executive orders? There are more than 40 of them. Biden doesn't even follow those. Biden signed an executive order mandating masks on federal ground, and on the same day broke his own order. There you go. And that's all of Biden's family. Do you see any of them wearing masks? Of course not. Of course not. They're in power. You are the little people. You are the people who follow rules. Think Biden is for his own religion? Whew. This is a tough one, guys. Take a moment to pay attention here. The video I'm about to show you is the perfect distillation of the Biden betrayal. We are a show here that respects religion. We know that believing in God is a force for good in the world. Data proves that. We would never, ever question anyone's faith. That alone is an issue between them and God. But when men who have devoted their entire life to the church speak out about Biden's betrayal of the church and their foundational principles, we believe that you deserve to hear what they have to say. We do not take clips like this lightly. Joe Biden professes to be a Catholic. Yet one of Biden's first acts as president was to order your tax dollars used to fund abortions around the world. Archbishop Joseph Naumann was brave enough to ask the question. He asked this question. He's the Archbishop of Kansas City, and this man speaks for millions of pro-life Christians and Catholics. Listen to what he had to say about Joe Biden's faith.
Well, it's a sad day for the nation, but it's a sad day particularly for us as Catholics to see a president who professes to be Catholic doing these things that are so contrary to our. And you know, when they use euphemisms, when you're violating fundamental human rights, you use euphemisms. And so you say this is health care for the poor. What other health care procedure does two people go in, one comes out dead and the other one scarred emotionally, spiritually, and sometimes even physically? I mean, he's obviously in debt to pro-abortion forces within his party, and he's just conforming to them. I wish he was as orthodox in his Catholic faith as he is in doing what Planned Parenthood instructs him to do.
What a stunning clip. His soul is in jeopardy, the priest said. Joe Biden is only the second Catholic president in history. A betrayal of his principles, Christian principles, American principles. That is the sounding note of the Biden presidency thus far. This is not your grandfather's Democratic Party. The Democratic Party of the Christian traditional working class is dead, replaced by a woke, corporatist, globalist superstructure designed for one thing and one thing alone: protecting themselves and crushing you. America needs more young fighters, more energy, more brave people to stand up to this system. Our next guest is one of those people. She's one of the most famous members of the Trump administration and is now making a huge jump into the political ring herself. Guys, this is big. We'll hear from the legendary Sarah Sanders when we come back. Biden's betrayal of our values has all Republicans looking to the future. New energy, new champions, new fighters. From the tunnel emerged a fighter the conservative base knows very well, a beloved figure in the Trump administration, known for throwing haymakers at a bitterly biased press and then baking them a bourbon pie afterwards. So sweet. The woman who brought salty and sweet Southern charm to the White House, an all-around champion for the freedom movement, is now running for governor of her home state of Arkansas. Joining me now, the Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Always guaranteed to be lots of fun anytime I am part of the Benny Report. So thanks for having me.
Your announcement shook the base to the core. I saw it everywhere. Millions of views, tons of love, a presidential endorsement. How has your first week as a candidate gone?
It's been absolutely incredible. Just the overwhelming amount of support here in my home state of Arkansas and frankly from across the country has been just absolutely overwhelming. We're so proud of our first week, and we're going to keep that momentum going and keep that message both of being willing to fight back against the radical left, but also having a vision for the future and what's ahead. I think that's going to be really important for any candidate moving forward, and we're glad that we're setting the bar high in this first week.
That's right. Let's hear about that future. What is it that you want to do in Arkansas? This is clearly a position that is not foreign to your family, something that you know quite well, but also you know the base quite well. You know the American people very well. You did a wonderful job at the White House representing all of Americans. What are you going to do in Arkansas?
Well, I think that we have to run on a parallel track. One, we have to be willing and capable of standing up and fighting back against the radical left and their agenda that we know they're going to try to impose on states from Washington. With Democrats in control of the House and the Senate and the White House, we need people that are tough enough to stand up to that agenda, fight back, but we can't just fight. We also have to have that vision, certainly have to be aggressively focused on economic development, education, reforming healthcare, lower taxes, and frankly, fighting for freedom and making sure that we do everything we can to keep the government out of the way and allow individuals to make the best decisions possible for their family. At the end of the day, government's job isn't to complicate, but it's to facilitate, not be in the way, but frankly, to create an environment so people can make the best decisions possible for themselves and for their families. And we want to help do that. And we want to help provide that opportunity in our state and be a leader across the country so that people can use Arkansas instead of pointing to what they don't want to do. We want to be an example of what can be done and what can be accomplished here.
What are some of the first day, you hear a lot about Joe Biden, day one. What's some of the day one items for a potential Sarah Sanders administration?
Well, education is something that is incredibly important to me. I think it is one of our biggest pathways to help people and provide a lifetime of opportunity. And so I really want to zero in. Part of my background was one of my very first jobs was at the Department of Education. I learned a lot of things about what we don't want to do, but I also have a deep passion because I have 3 elementary aged children, and I know the impact that education has on their daily life and frankly has on their long-term life. And so we want to really focus on how we make opportunity for every kid in the state, no matter where they start. We want to give them a path to determine how they finish. So that'll be a big priority starting on day one and every day in my administration.
Sarah, I know this is an exciting new chapter in your life, but you were made famous, a household name across the country for your work here in Washington, D.C. Much of that time you were standing up to some of the insane radical left. You did this very, very well. We're a bit of a thug life hero for doing so. But you're going to be bringing that battle, continue that battle. And I saw that in your announcement video. Can you tell us, can you inspire young people who are looking out right now, right? So you've looked out from the press podium at the White House in your position in the campaign, and you face down the left, the radical left, and a lot of the extremists. What inspiration can you give to a young person who's looking at the political world right now and saying, wow, this is insurmountable. Things are not going our way. Maybe I'm getting depressed. Maybe I'm getting sad. What is your message to them?
Well, I think it's really simple. Look at the millions of Americans who have come out to support freedom, who have come out to support conservative principles. It's the largest turnout we've ever had. And Donald Trump helped expand the type of voters that are voting for Republicans, both Hispanic Americans, African Americans. We elected more women in the Republican Party than we have in the past. We are growing, and there is a massive movement and energy behind this movement. And certainly, I don't think that's going away. If anything, I think it will get stronger as we continue to see the radical left policies out of the Biden administration. I thought it was going to be bad, but I thought they would at least work through Congress. It's much worse than I think any of us could have anticipated. The fact that an American president on his very first day in office took action to eliminate jobs from the American worker is absolutely mind-blowing. And I think that that should be something that enlightens everyone and certainly energizes the conservative movement and conservative cause to make sure we don't allow that to continue and that we stand up and in 2022 we make sure people are getting elected from the state and local level as well as the federal level so that we can push back and really drive home conservative principles.
Energizing the conservative cause and the base is your specialty, Sarah. Thank you so very much for joining us on the Benny Report.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Our next guest professionally ridicules the political ruling class, which we at this show think is critically important. The CEO of the Babylon Bee, America's most trusted source of fake news, joins us when we get back. Babylon Bee. Joining us now, CEO of the Babylon Bee, Seth Dillon. Seth, thank you so much for coming on.
Benny, great to be here with you.
Okay, so just a quick overview. Tell us about the Bee. Tell the audience about the Bee, how it operates. Where do you guys come up with your hilarity, your insanity, probably the most accurate headlines in the political world right now?
Well, the word you used is perfect. You said ridicule. We ridicule things. If I could sum up what we do in the most concise way possible, I'd say we ridicule bad ideas. That's what we do. And we do it from a specific political perspective. We do it from a conservative, right of center, theologically Christian perspective for the most part. That's how the site was really originated. And we've thrived in that space because there's nobody really on this side doing that well. The left is so good at humor, at mockery, at deriding their opponents. And I think they have to be good at it because they're not good at arguing. They're not good at making their points through rational argumentation, so they have to ridicule their opponents and attack them personally. What we do, I worded that very deliberately. We ridicule bad ideas. We don't ridicule the person. We ridicule their ideas. So we hold their ideas up and say, are these ideas tenable? Do they make sense? Are they rational? Are they senseless and deserving of our ridicule? So the mockery and the irony and everything that comes to play in satire is what makes it so effective, I think, because on the one hand you have regular rational argumentation, which has its place. There's a reason that good philosophy exists. It's because bad philosophy has to be answered, right? But that's the same reason that satire must exist, is because there are bad ideas out there that need to be ridiculed, or else people are going to buy into them, I think. So that's what we do. We come up with our ideas just by looking at the headlines and saying, how can we exaggerate this a little bit to draw out the absurdity of it? Because there's so much absurd stuff happening in the world today. And we try to do that, take it a step further. And I have to be honest with you, in today's world, people think it's easier to do satire. It's harder because you have to exaggerate things and they're already so nuts. It's difficult to go a step beyond where reality already is.
Why don't conservatives use humor more, Seth? It's such a potent weapon.
I think we're getting better at it. Don't you think we're getting better at it? I think you're pretty good at it. We're certainly rare, I think, but people I think are starting to understand the effectiveness of it a little bit more. And especially as you see, when you wrap a package in humor, it's more easily received and delivered, right? It's going to get shared more. So I think the effectiveness is going to drive the use of it. And I can't tell you how many conservative organizations we've talked to that want to start doing stuff more like what we're doing. We've had so many conversations with people who want to partner with us in some way or are wanting to start doing something like what we're doing because they find the effectiveness of it is just so, overwhelming compared to a lot of other methods. Amazing.
Seth, we have 30 seconds left here. Can I please put up one of your headlines? Just to show the audience exactly what incredible work you do. New SEC rule, Wall Street will now only allow traders who wear a top hat and monocle to carry around giant bags of money. So important.
Well, I mean, look, you got to keep out the riffraff, right? We can't have poor people trading on the stock market.
Z, can we put up the one that we were talking about earlier? Just for a second. China develops new, more protective anal mask. Seth!
See, now
revolutionary.
Look. This is exactly my point. How do you go beyond reality? You've got to go that far to go beyond reality because at this point, it's 2 masks, 3 masks, 4 masks, masks on the back of your head. Where else are they going to go? Anal swabs. Come on.
I really do believe that is what the world needed. Thank you, 2021. That's what we all needed, and more anal swabs. Thank you so very much. Exactly. Thank you, Seth, for joining us. Please come back soon. We need more humor. We really, truly do. Guys, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. So sad. That does it for us here on The Benny Report. Flew by that show. America's the greatest country in the world. America's worth fighting for. Keep memeing, keep criticizing, keep thinking, keep fighting. Keep using humor, by the way. I'm Benny Johnson, and we are right here fighting alongside of you. Thank you. See ya.
Hello, everyone. I'm Heather Childers, and welcome to The Count, where we are counting down the major stories of the week.
And I'm Joe Pinion. We'll also be bringing you the numbers behind the stories that matter and a few lists of our very own favorite things. Also joining us throughout the evening, political analyst Mark Halperin.
But kicking off the count tonight, our story number 10. The Democrats circling, getting ready to begin the second impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump on Tuesday the 9th. Well, Trump is, of course, the first president in history of the United States to be impeached twice. And the Democrats seem to be looking maybe for a quick trial. So how will all of this go down? Our White House correspondent Emerald Robinson joins us now with some details live for us from Washington, D.C. Hi, Emerald.
Hi, Heather. Good to see you on this Saturday. Yeah, we're actually counting down the days till the second impeachment of Donald J. Trump, which, as you said, will begin on Tuesday. But what will not, or who will not be at the trial, is Donald Trump himself. In fact, impeachment managers led by Representative Jamie Raskin sent a letter to Trump's lawyers requesting that he testify last week, saying, quote, if you decline this invitation, we reserve any and all rights, including the right to establish at trial that your refusal to testify supports a strong adverse inference regarding your actions, in parentheses, and inaction on January 6th. Well, former president's lawyer, David Schoen, hit back with a resounding letter making clear that Donald Trump would not show up and saying that this is a public relations stunt, and adding that there is no such thing as negative inference in this unconstitutional proceeding. The president's lawyers also saying that Democrats can't prove their allegations and that the use of our Constitution to bring a purported impeachment proceeding is much too serious to try and play these games. Now, besides arguing on two fronts, one, that the impeachment is unconstitutional, and also that the former president's speech is protected by the First Amendment rights, they also plan to turn Democrats' words on themselves, highlighting some of the rhetoric that was used during the summer during the rioting and looting by playing a video of those sound bites, something that'll probably be a lot like this. Take a listen.
They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And this is a movement. Everyone beware. They're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should not.
There needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
So that's the former president's strategy heading into impeachment. There have been some advisors who've been pushing him to use this opportunity to also bring forth evidence of his voter fraud claims that didn't actually get to hit the House floor on January 6th in light of the events that happened. But it sounds like from people we've talked to that they're going to stick with the constitutionality, First Amendment, and then turning Democrats' words on themselves. Heather and Joe.
All right, Emerald, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Well, there's a big question out there as to whether pursuing an impeachment against someone who is no longer in office is even constitutional. We're going to speak with Harvard Law Professor Emeritus and author of the book Guilty by Accusation, the man, the myth, the legend, Alan Dershowitz. Thank you so much for joining us, as always. I want to start talking about this. We have story number 9. We're basically talking about the fact that these individuals here have no interest in actually following the Constitution. They're basically ripping up the Constitution or writing it on the back of a napkin. Can you actually proceed with this impeachment under the law, in your opinion?
Not under the law, but Congress is above the law. They claim that they can do anything they want. They have the power to impeach anybody. There's no statute of limitations. They don't have to follow the constitutional criteria. They can impose a double standard. Look, under the standard that they themselves have set out, you could today impeach the vice president of the United States for remarks she's made, or you could remove from the House Congresswoman Waters or other members of the Democratic administration. You could go after criminally labor leaders, suffragettes, radicals on the left, radicals on the right. The kind of speech that the president made is typical of kind of very boisterous, radical rhetoric that's made in the Capitol all the time, except he used two words that they don't usually use, peacefully and patriotically. And those words make it clear that the Constitution, the First Amendment, protects what he said, and that he is not legally, constitutionally responsible for what a small number of people who were at his speech may have done, did do. They're responsible. after they made the decision, some of it pre-planned, to go into the Capitol and wreak violence. Also, I just don't see a basis in the Constitution or in the words of James Madison, the father of the Constitution, for putting on trial somebody who has already left office as the result of his term being over and not being elected. James Madison said in Federalist 37, impeachment is for a sitting official, a sitting officer during his term of office.
Right.
And the Constitution says the purpose of impeachment is to remove somebody. Once he's removed, they don't have the power simply to disqualify. If they did, they could go after anybody who might run for president. If the Republicans come up with a young, vigorous candidate, say, give you an example, Nikki Haley is making a lot of very interesting arguments now. She's very, very strong and very good. The Democrats could decide to impeach her. She was, after all, our permanent representative to the United Nations.
Right.
They could go and impeach her and thereby prevent her from running against President Biden in the next election. Under their theory, they could do that.
Well, Alan, we all know that this is really about keeping the former president from being able to run again in 2024. But I want to ask you in terms of what we can expect to happen next week, just logistically, because we did hear that obviously the impeachment managers had requested that the former president appear as a witness. Then his attorney said, no, that's not going to happen. When will we know in terms of other witnesses being called? How will that happen? And at the very beginning, could there be a call to just dismiss all of this? Is there a possibility that it wouldn't happen in terms of scheduling and for the very reasons that you were just talking about, that it's unconstitutional to begin with?
If this were a fair tribunal, there would be a motion made to dismiss. And if the Chief Justice presided, he's not presiding, he would probably grant the motion to dismiss. There's no jurisdiction. There's no impeachable offense. But that's not going to happen because the Democrats, with the vice president, have a majority and they have a few Republicans on their side. So the trial will go forward. I think the first motion will be jurisdictional. It will lose by a vote of 55 to 45. Then there will be evidence presented by the House managers. They'll show the videotape of the speech. They'll show the videotape of what happened in the Capitol. And then Jamie Raskin, my former student, will argue that you can draw a negative inference from the president now showing up. Apparently, Jamie, who was a very good student, missed that class where I taught them about adverse inferences. The Constitution does not permit an adverse inference unless the defendant pleaded the Fifth Amendment, unless he said, I refuse to answer on the ground that a truthful answer might tend to incriminate me, you can draw an adverse inference. But you can't draw an adverse inference from a president saying, this is an unconstitutional proceeding, I have a First Amendment right. I refuse to accept your invitation. They could have subpoenaed him. Had they subpoenaed him, he would go to court and then challenge the entire proceeding, but they didn't want to do that.
Well, Alan, we're out of time. It'll be very interesting to see what happens this coming week because we are definitely in uncharted territory. Thank you very much for joining us on this Saturday night.
Thank you.
All right. Well, coming up on The Count, story number 9, will infighting among GOP lawmakers hurt the future of the Republican Party, especially as hypocritical Democrats just continue to attack? More to come that you can count on because you can count on The Count. And welcome back to The Count, where we are counting down the major stories of the week. I'm Heather Childers along with Joe Pinion. You know, it was an unprecedented move. The House stripping Georgia freshman Marjorie Taylor Greene of her committee assignments for some controversial comments that she's made in the past before becoming a congresswoman. But Republicans are calling out the Democrats' double standard for not holding other members of Congress responsible for similar actions, and in some cases worse. And they do plan on fighting back, the Republicans do. For more, let's bring in national correspondent Logan Raddick on Capitol Hill. Logan?
That's right. Any member of the House can now be stripped of their committee assignments if their colleagues vote to do so. And the same Democrats that voted to punish Greene for comments she made before her election have failed to do so to their own members who've made inflammatory statements while in office. And Greene says that her constituents will pay the biggest price.
When the Democrats and 11 of my Republican colleagues decided to strip me of my committee assignments, Education and Labor and the Budget Committee, they actually stripped my district of their voice. They stripped my voters of having representation to work for them for the budget, a successful business owner that knows how to make a profit, not a loss. That's what my district voted for me for.
Republicans agree that this move sets a dangerous precedent.
Marjorie Greene gets kicked off her committee, so she can't represent the people in her district. The Democrats in Congress may like that, but I don't think the people in her district, 75% of them who voted for her, appreciate it very much.
GOP members say the same can be done to Democrats, especially those in leadership positions. It wasn't that long ago that Maxine Waters riled up Democrat voters to get right up in the faces of members of the Trump administration. You could forget Chuck Schumer's not-so-veiled threats against President Trump's Supreme Court appointees.